or something came up last minute, we'll still be able to see the responses from the panel. So welcome everybody to our roundtable discussion. It's called Where Talent is going to Intersect with Space Growth Opportunities. I'm Stephen St. John. I'm an Aerospace and Defense Fellow with the University of Tennessee Space Institute, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Along with me, we have a very esteemed panel of members. I'll go down the list real quick and I'll let them introduce themselves in a few minutes. First, we have Mrs. Gera Womacks. She is the Space Systems Engineer Team Manager at SAIC here in Huntsville. We have Dr. Logan Grumbach, the Vice President of Ignite Impossible. We have Mr. Hank Rinehart, the Technical Director for the Advanced Concepts Engineering Division at Torch Technologies. And we have Master Sergeant Matthew Davis, the Superintendent for Space Force Line Officer Recruiting. So over the next hour, we'll discuss the growing space economy, its impact on the space defense industry, and then the evolving talent needs required to meet that demand. Furthermore, the panel members will discuss required skill sets, emerging roles, and how academia can prepare future professionals to meet the demands of industry and the Space Force. So if I can get each of the panel members to maybe give a brief background of what your current role is and where you came from and how you are integrated in the space defense industry, that'd be fantastic.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mrs. Womacks. I work for SAIC. A little bit of background about me. So I started in the Air Force, mostly under maintenance. That's where my passion for engineering really took off. Building electronics and working with aircraft. I have a true passion for aircraft. And then did a summer at the Air Force Academy under the Space Division. And then that's where I learned everything about RF communications and satellite integration and everything. And it just kind of pivot my passion to go for a degree in aerospace engineering and understanding satellite and orbital dynamics. Post that, I was part of the intelligence community for quite a few years. And then my current role at SAIC is under the Battle Management, Command, Control, and Communications. And we build software application factories for space applications to be deployed to a satellite mesh network in LEO ops and higher ops. And so I just oversee all of that systems integration and then deployment to operations for applications.
Hi, everybody. Logan Grumbach here. I'm a vice president at Ignite, and I oversee the space, intelligence, and missile defense portfolios at Ignite. I have teams all around the country supporting everyone from Space Force to NASA, to the Missile Defense Agency, various IC partners. And I also, as part of some billable time, work with the Space Force to help them identify and plan for some emerging technologies, low TRL type of technologies, and how those might impact the space domain. My background's primarily historically been missile defense. I'm an engineer by training, and so I've spent about 15 years supporting in and around the Missile Defense Agency, everything from interceptors to radars to sensors and kind of everything in between. Thanks for the invite, Stephen.
All right, thanks, Stephen, again. My name is Hank Rinehart. I'm the technical director at Torch Technologies here in Huntsville for our Advanced Concepts group. Been to Torch a little over 5 years now, and a little over 24 years total experience in various capacities across the defense sector, primarily sensors and surveillance. And when I came to Torch, focused on the Army's tactical space applications, integrating with mission partners and other entities that were working those problems. So in the past few years as tech director, my objectives are focused on our broad capabilities in a number of different areas, but we do support Spacecom, Space Force across Colorado Springs, some elements here in Huntsville and other places within the country. And we're looking at investing and making innovations for our customers in different areas, including command and control, AI, ML, and other application areas for systems that are transitioning to space capabilities. Over.
Awesome. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Master Matthew Davis. I'm fairly new to the space industry. I've been in the Air Force / Space Force for a combined 15 years. A few years back, the Space Force opened up a thing called the Inter-Service Transfer Portal, and then I switched over from the Air Force to the Space Force. At that time, I had about 5 years of recruiting experience, and the Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force thought it would be best utilized over here standing up the Space Force recruiting squadron. So I was able to go through some undergraduate space training, got a little bit in depth into the space mission and what we're trying to accomplish. But really, my focal point is Space Force recruiting. We just started building our recruiting service as a whole, so it's really exciting right now. And we're looking for exciting new talent to come in and help build this new force. So a lot of our members came from other branches, and new individuals that are going to start coming through are going to be the first guardians really building this pathway. So I'm excited to talk to everybody and look forward to the conversation with this great panel. Thank you.
That's fantastic. As everybody can see, we have a very wide array of expertise and talent on our panel today. So at the end, if we have time for some additional questions, feel free to pepper them with questions. But I'll get us started with the first question that I have. So this is open to everybody. With the exponential growth that we've seen in the space domain over the last 5 to 10 years, do you see the renewed integration between military and commercial space operations changing the talent landscape?
Absolutely, Stephen. So if I could go first, primarily everything is building that road to space and building those launch systems. A lot of the industry is pivoting to a repeatable process and strategic mindset and kind of manufacturing and reducing all of the waste and some of that red tape to make that repeatable process. So I think merging the technologies, it's going to be leaning towards that and maintaining just product development and a lean mindset and just innovative and resilient throughout any of the coasts by any of the members, where I can just place staff wherever and we can just continue to do launch systems bi-weekly if possible.
Yeah, if I could follow that up, a couple of different ways I could see it definitely impacting workforce. So one would be workforce mobility. You know, as some of these commercial entities integrate more with the defense sector and have cleared personnel, there'll probably be a lot more opportunity for movement to move between commercial and government and just kind of more swirl within the workforce. And then number two, I think integrators will be more valuable than ever as we try to integrate those both the capabilities and the technologies into the defense sector. That's an area that is near and dear to my heart for sure. And we're going to need a lot of help, particularly maybe not in the super hardcore engineering, but just how do we get the systems to play nice?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I concur with comments made so far. I think there's a couple of statistics that are relevant to what we're talking about today. And again, I'll preface, these are dated by about a year and a half. But in regards to your question, Stephen, you know, we're looking at collecting 10 to 20 times more Earth imagery than we did just 5 to 8 years ago, and probably 10 times the bandwidth of communications traveling around the globe in space. And the GAO estimates by the end of the decade we'll have 10 times the number of satellites that we have on orbit today. So that could be 50 to 60,000 assets on orbit. So from my perspective, a lot of the impact of the growing economy on space is really, how do we manage that? And that's not just awareness, but traffic management. How do you understand how to deal with all those assets that are up there and ensure deconfliction, and that we don't have a massive, you know, incident, if you will, on orbit that takes a lot of other assets out of play? Over.
Copy. And I'll just follow up from the military standpoint with the Space Forces. You know, we had a Space Command prior to the Space Force, so it's always been something that we had around, and we had individuals come into this pathway. So Now I think we're just putting more of a highlight on it and really trying to ramp up our manning to focus on this ever growing need to have these individuals taking care of the mission set. So because we're growing so fast and there's so much going up there, we need more bodies to take care of the mission. So great.
Yeah, I think the importance of the domain is starting to proliferate throughout all of government, and people are starting to understand that we need to start vectoring different people towards the space domain to help solve some of these really hard problems. Because without space, you're not going to be able to fight a war on land or a maritime war or anything like that, just because it enables everything. And then looking at it from like the space warfare perspective, which is probably coming soon. Got to have a lot of really good talent, I think, to be to get after these problem sets, and I think we're marching in the right direction. I think it's just going to continue to grow over time, like Master Davis was saying. We're looking to make sure that we're bringing in the right kind of people at the right time, and focused on the right efforts, which all the panel members kind of talked about, right? So I'll follow up with another question. So from your vantage point, what are the most significant talent gaps that are currently faced by the space defense enterprise? And how are these really impacting your organization's operations?
For SAIC, so Stephen, I've been hiring a lot of talent. I have a lot of recs open. Right now, my customer is the Space Development Agency and their Space Force, and so they're very critical. And some of the deltas in skill sets is hands-on keyboard with software. A lot of our younger generation, from the time they are, toddlers, they're coding, they're working on software, they're building applications, utilizing their iPhones and everything else. But between the time that they are able to join the workforce and then some of those skill sets are lost, and some of the skill sets just transition more towards managerial roles. So it's hard to find people that have a background in software or are not afraid of the challenge of getting intimate with software and open source code that's available out there via GitLab and GitHub. And that's the future.
Yeah, I'll add on to that from my experience. I've been working in the space domain for maybe about a year and a half. I'm pretty new to it. Touched it a lot through MDA, but I can give you some perspectives from there and from the engineering side too. We've had a lot of trouble finding software engineers. I'm an experiential guy, so giving you some of my experiences. I worked at some of the larger defense contractors in the world, and when we would offer software engineers what we could pay them based on the rates, sometimes they would laugh at us because they were getting offers from Google that were 2 or 3 times what we could pay, right? And you would think that the pendulum might swing the other way. And once, the tech bubble kind of burst and there were a lot of layoffs, well, the talent's still not cleared. And so they're not terribly useful to us right off of, from a off the shelf perspective. And that's been one of our biggest pains. One thing that our company's been successful with is getting people in other roles and then sending them back to school to learn those types of skills, whether it's AI or software or whatever. I have a couple of guys right now on my teams that are doing that. And then from the space perspective, kind of what I've seen is with our particular customer, they need really, really detailed, qualified personnel that are incredibly difficult to find. And it may take us a month to find the right person, or 2 months, or even longer, just because of the highly technical skill set. And there's not that many people in the world, that do that. And typically when you're taking it, you're just picking it from another part of the government that needs it too. So that's been my experience.
I think on our end at Torch, we've seen this in a couple of places, but one of the things that I observe is we are facing a future gap, if not today as well, where we have some of the workforce, some of our subject matter expertise, they're opting to retire and moving on to other things. backfilling is a significant challenge, especially if we're not transitioning and training the new generation to take on those capabilities and develop those expertise. And again, keying off of what Logan mentioned, from the space enterprise on the commercial side, if the commercial industry wants to move and do something fast, they will find ways to do it, and they will do it fast. And obviously they're willing to pay people to do that. Regardless of whether we can pay the workforce the same, I think we have a gap where we need to understand how we can better bring in some of their efficiency gains and development strategies to make our pace more closely aligned with what industry is able to achieve.
Yeah, I think you guys are bringing up a lot of key points. I'll get to you here in a second, Master and Davis. I got a follow-up for you specifically, but Gera's talking about Python coding is huge and the gaps. So I've seen that myself, and looking at different opportunities that are out there. Everybody wants somebody who understands Python. It's not hard to learn, but it takes some motivation to get out and learn that, right? And that's definitely a gap that we need to try to fill. But also, you talk about the technical expertise with somebody who also has leadership skills, right? And so that's kind of sometimes can be hard to find, right? Some people just want to focus on doing the mission, being very technical and down in the weeds and doing the research. But you also need people who understand that stuff, but also can lead people, programs, and resources. And I think that's definitely a gap that I think industry has seen over the last few years. It's kind of funny, Logan, you talk about not being able to pay some of these software developers what they can get other places. And so we saw this exact same thing in the Space Force, where we have a lot of cyber professionals and we send them to a lot of training that cost a lot of money. And then we're finding out that, they can go out and make $200,000 to $500,000 a year with that same training. So why would they stay in the Space Force other than to serve their nation? And so it's one of those challenges that the Space Force is working with on a daily basis as well. And then you guys also talked about upskilling your own personnel, right? I think that's super important because I think some of the generational gaps and some of the expertise gaps that we don't have right now, I think those can be overcame with the right upskilling opportunities, right? So you get the right people in with the right personality and motivation and intent, and you can probably train them to do a lot of things that that are really hard for you to find right now in your talent pool. So I think all that's fantastic. Master Davis, I want to follow up with you on this question though, because I think it's more specific to Space Force, right? And so can you tell us more about the kind of people the Space Force is looking to recruit? And are there any efforts within the Space Force to recruit candidates from non-traditional backgrounds or from other industries that bring a fresh perspective to the space defense industry?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll kind of go over enlisted and officer. I know this might be more of an officer heavy, group, but from an enlisted standpoint, no background's really needed. If you're interested in Space Force, that's what we really care about. We want people that want to learn this mission set. Our enlisted corps is going through the same training that the officer corps is going. If it's intel, if it's cyber, or if it's space, they're still getting really great training, certifications, license opportunities, all these great things. As for the officer side, a little bit more goes into it when it comes to background, education, experience, leadership roles. There's so many things the board members take into account. So really, you may not have a space background, but do you have a good leadership background? Did you take care of people and lead teams, different things like that? Were you, involved in your school and organizations? Were you taking on different roles to make you stand out? Those are some of the things the board likes. Maybe your degree's not in STEM, but you really did well in your degree. Maybe it was psychology and you got 4.0 and you did a lot of good things there. They're not going to just say, hey, this is our mold and this is what we want and that's it. They're going to look at the whole person concept and they're going to see who's going to be a good fit for our culture, because we're going to give the training. Enlisted or officer, you're going to get so much great training. And from there, yeah, there's some things that will help though. I mean, if you come with the STEM background in cyber and you led and you checked all those boxes, then you'll probably stand out a little bit more than somebody that only had a couple of the boxes checked. So yeah, a lot of different pieces kind of go into play with the boards and what they're looking for to select the individuals we want to bring in the Space Force.
Fantastic perspective. And I think it's a lot of good information. So people understand that, it's not just about one aspect, it's whole person concept. We're looking for a person that fits our culture, and we will give you all the training that you need to be successful, right? And resources and whatnot. And I think the same could be said for, some of these industry partners as well. It's, I've talked to Logan and Hank about this before, is like, if they find the right person, then they will find a way to make them successful in their organization, right? And I think that's what a lot of industry partners are starting to do now, and they realize the value of that. I do have one question from Jeffrey Martin that I'll get to because it's kind of pertinent to this section, but it's a question really for Gera, Logan, and Hank. What do you think about the concept of having employees serve full-time in the commercial sector, but then part-time in the Space Force? He's particularly interested in how you see your respective companies participating in this type of arrangement, what might be an advantage to your respective firm or disadvantage. The same question applies to promoting your employees taking on temporary assignments in government, much like lawyers might go clerk for a judge for a period of time and then return to the original firm. Anybody wants to take that one?
Yeah, I can start with that one. So at SAIC, our core values are integrity, innovation, and inclusion. And we are among the top 10 of the larger defense contractor companies that have members of our executive leadership as well as middle management that serve full-time on our commercial side, but then do part-time on our guard side. So we highly encourage it and we love it. Some of the maybe disadvantages where we see challenges are folks that come from an acquisitions background, just because if you are part of acquisitions and you are involved with proposals or assignment of projects and programs, those names cannot be connected back to the company. So we lose some of those programs, but space defense side, cyber, intel, anything like that, yeah, we highly encourage it. We love it. I love it. I personally look at it when I'm hiring for my force and my staff under my portfolio. 3% of them are active guard or reserve.
Yeah, very similar here at Ignite. We definitely embrace that opportunity to work with people and have them serve. I have another VP that sits right down the hall from me that's an 06 in the Air Force reserves. And then I actually have a guy, right now that's on my space team, and we're coming up on this huge culminating event this summer, and he's going to unfortunately miss it because he's being sent to warrant school. And that's just part of it, right? He's serving his country. We're proud of him. We hate that he's going to miss the event, but we also know that he's got to do what he's got to do. And ultimately, here at Ignite, we're here to solve the warfighter's problems. And if that's by being a warfighter part-time, we're happy to support those folks. And we have several at our company as well that are doing that, and we definitely support it. And we haven't run across the acquisition portion yet, but it's mostly from us just a scheduling thing with customers, making sure they understand and making sure that we can cover down for them while they're gone.
And Torch is very similar to what you've heard so far. We have several folks in our organization that are active or reserve guard participants as well, still serving. A couple of those are out this week, actually, and we've had some discussions. You manage around it, but we're happy that they do that, and we appreciate them for their service. But they provide significant value to our organization and insights from their own service and support activities as well. Additionally, and I'm sure the other companies, Ignite and SAIC, are the same here. We look to partner with universities and academia, as well as some of the major academies on the service side, to bring in internships over the summer or throughout the year. So those that are going through school obviously have that opportunity, and it's not limited to just public sector universities. That includes military academies also, and we're actively involved in the Skill Bridge program, which, again, I'm sure most companies in the defense sector have some connectivity to that, but we do take advantage of that for our purposes to help find the right talent and help them land safely into the industrial sector when they choose to move on from their current level of service. Over.
Yeah, and I think, one aspect too is if you can manage around the scheduling conflicts and things like that, I think you're getting members who have instant credibility in that community, right? And so that brings a lot of value back to your company, and just shows the community that you're willing to support those individuals and support their mission set, and that's at the forefront of your mind. So I think there's a lot of advantages to doing that if you can get around some of the scheduling hurdles associated. Jeffrey, does that kind of answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does. I'll just add, I find the responses incredibly encouraging. I had spent 2 years down on loan to Maxwell Air Force Base, at the end of which the Space Force was stood up. And access to talent and competition with the commercial sector and accommodating people's desire who may go into the commercial sector to still be able to serve and contribute. I mean, these were things very much on their mind. And so I'm very encouraged by the responses that I just heard. Thank you.
And I will say, Huntsville just being a very military-centric town as well, I think that plays into probably the industry partners here. I'm not sure the same could be said in other areas of the country, but obviously here in the Tennessee Valley, I think most of the companies are very willing to work with people who want to serve and also want to provide that support to industry partners. I think that's pretty fair to say.
Well, I'll just add, and I'm butting in, I think the ability to have a large pool of people that are read in, that can be brought in and activated when that manpower is needed, which isn't needed every day, is hugely important.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure if Sergeant Davis wants to talk to this, if he's on this, but you can kind of see that right now with the whole reserves, Air Force reserves that are space related, transitioning over to Space Force, and how they're going from a full-time and part-time perspective where they can increase their numbers to support the active force when they need to, but decrease those at other times when we're in kind of a lull. And I think that's an important piece of being ready for any kind of conflict that could arise or any kind of operation that needs additional resources and manpower. I think having that bench ready to go, and with people who are doing that job every day just in the commercial sector, gives us a huge advantage over some of our competitors. So yeah, I think it's fantastic if we can continue to do that. All right, I'll move on to the next question. Let's see. So what specific skills or knowledge do you think that universities should be focusing on to prepare students for the roles that you're seeing right now growing in the space defense sector?
I think just consolidating what we've all said is that systems engineering and understanding how to design a system, understand requirements, analysis of requirements, analysis of integration, and building out roadmaps. Even with smaller projects, there's always the token phrase of everything is a project, but if you really take a systematic engineering approach via academia, and having those building blocks is so crucial once you enter into the workforce. I don't have to teach you about, the basics or how to read a requirement and question things in an analytical fashion. You learned all of that in school, so now I can give you a statement of work or give you a contract, and then you can piece it apart and have fun with it, and we can just develop projects, develop product, and support the warfighter best we can.
Yeah, so I teach part-time at UAH right down the road, and I have a few opinions on this, but I think typically what we do very well is we teach those hard skills, especially, I'm going to speak from the STEM environment because that's where I came from and that's where I grew up. Thermodynamics, dynamics, all of the very difficult science, engineering concepts. What I think gets glossed over that I miss a lot, for especially in my junior staff and as I have hired younger people throughout the years, is kind of what you were saying earlier, Stephen, those soft skills. Um, I'm used to having people come out of college that are scared to death to brief. They're scared to death to talk to people. They're scared to death to be wrong. Being able to incorporate, in addition to those kind of hard scientific skills, and very much to what Gerald was saying, systems engineering. How do you drive a program? How do you manage suppliers? How do you give an appropriate briefing? All of those skills would be paramount to success coming through. And, I'll be transparent here. I wasn't the smartest in any room for sure. I spent 2 of the best semesters of my life in dynamics. I knew I wasn't going to be a dynamicist, but eventually I figured out what I was good at. And I think we scare away a lot of people that could be really beneficial to us just because maybe they can't succeed in some of those, more difficult STEM backgrounds.
I'll add to that with a bit of a personal reference. We face this a lot where we have a lot of engineers, young talent that's very capable, but and they've got the basics covered. But a lot of times I see where we don't seem to have enough opportunity for them to engage in very broader, broader is not the right word, but more encompassing system level activities. And that could include, the teaming and briefing and presenting designs. That's a part of it too. But, one of the things that we almost never get until you get to grad school or beyond is, or even in the services with their direct training, that real system level perspective. We work problems in undergraduate school on thermo and analysis and signals and systems and things of that nature, but really understanding the impact of those design choices on the broader system and the system of systems is something that we don't really get a lot of perspective on until you've lived it and been through it. And I think going back to the kind of commercial sector part, the willingness to fail or knowing how to fail and learn from that is a very key point. It's okay to do that because that's part of the discovery process.
Yeah, I think everything you guys said is spot on, and I've kind of seen some of this myself. You talk about analysis of requirements and understanding how to read a requirement, understanding what your customer's asking for as you research and you build said product or technology, I think is super important. But also understanding that at some point the end result is to operationalize that technology that you're researching and designing, right? And so thinking about it with some intuitiveness of like, how is this going to support the people that I'm trying to give this technology to, right, at some point. And so understanding that piece of it, I think, is really important. But kind of like what Logan and Hank said, right, is like the integration of components and understanding systems of systems, and not just focusing on one aspect, but looking at the second and third order effects of how those components are going to integrate together. And not just components, but systems, right? How are you going to bring, different systems together to provide different information at different times, but provide a overall effect? I think a lot of that is lost, and I think we need to start focusing our effort on that. But then the failing fast that you mentioned, Hank, right? And so I think that's a big cultural shift that the Space Force is making right now. And I think industry is making it as well. I mean, you can see it with almost every company, right? Willing to move out, move fast, fail, but learn from those failures, right? So making sure that you're going back and you're doing some analysis on the failures, and then taking those focus points and then driving them back into your next mission, right? And making sure that you're not making those same mistakes, right? You're making different mistakes and learning from those. And I think those are all things that, academia could really help in trying to make sure that we're giving students the opportunity to learn prior to getting out into the workforce, so that they're just more prepared mentally, and have that fortitude to get past some of those issues that we've seen some people can struggle with. So Sergeant Davis, I want to ask you this one because I think it's more specific to Space Force though. So for those people who choose to serve, right? And this could be, graduate level students, post-grad students type stuff, right? Doctoral students who want to just serve their country in some capacity. What long-term career development and growth opportunities exist for them in the Space Force?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd like to start off with an exciting new thing we started this fiscal year. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the officer training course, but every one of our Space Force officer selects will come through this new course that we designed, and they're going to learn cyber, intel, and space. So right off the bat, you're going to learn these three avenues. And then from there, the sky's the limit. Your career is going to be able to be really fluid based off your interests and what you want to accomplish and achieve. If you're interested more into the cyber world, then you can kind of go that direction. If you love the space operations route, then there's going to be pathways there. If you like intel, then you can go that route. As well as once you hit the rank of captain, there's going to be acquisitions opportunities to go and pursue that avenue. So, with that being said, our officers are going to it's a way more holistic approach where they're able to communicate better with their peers. They're able to make better decisions because they are more educated to all avenues of the space domain. So I think it's really exciting for the Space Force. Other branches have so many different jobs where they can't really narrow down how we can with just these three. So really cool. But besides that, I mean, there's so many different pathways for them to advance when it comes to advancing their education. All in all, their leadership development, leading teams in different ways across their ranks as they grow as an individual and as an officer. It's huge that transitions to the civilian sector. You're just this panel alone, so many people's brought up the Space Force. We're working with industry and universities, and you're having the ability to work with Canada and other countries and kind of build that resume where you can have those LinkedIn connections, and you're setting yourself up for the future, not just what's ahead of you in the Space Force. So that's pretty exciting. Tons of promotion opportunities and ways to advance there. But all in all, I mean, the sky's the limit. Space, the sky is no longer than the limit, right? Space is the new limit, and there's so many fun opportunities to grow if you go this pathway.
Yeah, I think you bring up a lot of interesting points, right? So I think one of the things that's really unique is education with industry opportunities, right? And we send numerous officers every year to go work with, the likes of SpaceX, Tesla, Google, etc. We send them there for 6 months to go embed and just, immerse themselves in what those companies and industry partners are doing so they can look to find efficiencies as they come back. And they also built relationships with those companies that can then be leveraged. And there's a common understanding between, the company and the military on requirements and different things like that. So I think that's a huge, unique opportunity for growth. You also mentioned officer training course, right? It's an OTC that everybody's going to go through now, cyber, space, and intel. I've done space and intel. And so and I did those before this whole, mesh kind of approach. And I'll tell you that, I think understanding all three of those from the get-go will provide a lot of benefit because you understand how to integrate, right? With those different career fields. As a space operator, I didn't really understand what intel could provide me. So I didn't know what to even ask for, right? But when I became an intel professional, I knew what space operators needed, so I was able to provide them with the tailored intelligence that was actionable that they could actually utilize. But when you're stovepipe and you don't understand what other people are doing, it leads to a lot of inefficiency. And so I think OTC is a move in the right direction. It's going to cost us a lot more time up front to develop those officers. But I think in the end, we're going to get a better product and we're going to get somebody who can actually get after some of these problem sets a lot quicker. Yeah, and then you also talked about, Space Force being able to focus its efforts, right? And so I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that Space Force is still under the Department of the Air Force, right? And so we've talked about this in prior sessions, but I'll just, reiterate that the Air Force service is still providing the Space Force with a lot of administrative capabilities. So a lot of the things that normally additional duties and different things like that that everybody would have to take care of. Space Force has tried to get away from a lot of that and focus 80% of their time on mission and 20% on the, ancillary type stuff. And so that is one of the benefits of joining the Space Force is you get to do really cool mission all the time, and you're not necessarily focusing on all the administrative type stuff, which I think is a huge benefit. I loved when we transitioned to that. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. We got a few more questions to go, and then we'll wrap it up. But okay, so what are some of the main challenges that you face when recruiting this talent, right? And how are you guys overcoming them? Like, what kind of cultural incentives, what kind of opportunities are you, kind of like hanging out there with the fishing pole if you're trying to get certain kind of talent? What are you guys doing to, be more competitive in this environment to get the right talent that you need?
So with SAIC, we've pivoted to building strong partnerships with academia. We are now, some of our executive leadership is now teaching courses at like University of Tennessee, UEH, CU Boulder, things like that. We're also building contracts in our Innovation Factory Business Group, where we go to service academies and we are, hey, we have this crazy idea, we have the funding, like here is some money, here are some ideas, have some time, work through it, like let's build a project, let's build a program and product that way. So we're hiring a lot of talent from those sides. Additionally, we're also working with high school counselors and middle school counselors. So we're also, getting that younger talent that are involved with like robotics and arts and science and design and things like that. And so we're getting a lot of our ERGs and community engagements throughout a different platform. SAIC, we're huge here in Huntsville, but like I came from Colorado and, Lockheed is like the big one there, or Boeing. But now that I am in SAIC, I've realized like Colorado is another like big hub for SAIC. And so we're expanding our team topology to really build a culture throughout the state and not just centralized locations.
Yeah, as far as the challenges, right? It comes down to one word: it's competition. Pretty much everybody on the call, right? We're all after the exact same talent. We're all trying to hire the same people. And in this line of work specifically, we're geographically kind of tied down to where you can get specific accesses. And I suffer through that quite a lot, trying to support some of my Intel and Space Force customers from here in Huntsville, just from a facility and connectivity standpoint. And so we do a lot of the same things that were just discussed. I teach at UAH. I speak at the ASCTE, the local high school here that focuses on cyber technology and engineering. Many of our other staff do the same thing. But, especially as a small business, man, we've had to get creative. One of my best Intel analysts right now that's supporting Space Force and some other opportunities, he came from he was an investigative journalist in his past life and looking for insider trading. And we pulled this guy in. He had some tangential skills, and man, he's absolutely killing it. And you just got to be creative. You got to go find the talent where you can, and where you can get close enough. At one point in my past life, we were looking for people. I had a manager come to me and say, hey, we can find all kinds of people that can tell me how a radar works, but we don't have a lot that can, read the output of a radar for electronic warfare type modeling and SIM applications. And so we actually went into the meteorology school and found people that read radars for a living and brought some of those folks in. So yeah, just we're trying to be creative. We're trying to go get talent wherever talent is, and bring solutions kind of from outside the box.
Yeah, you're hearing a lot of the same themes from a number of companies that work in this sector. Competing with commercial industry is always going to be a challenge. Part of our problem is also finding the right, needle in a haystack kind of problem where you've got to make it through a lot of applicants sometimes just to find the right one that has the right skill set and the right culture fit. But on the side of the company, Torch, as well as others, especially those on the call, we all have a similar strategy to some extent in terms of how we portray the culture of the company. We want people that fit within our organization, align with our values, and we try to, and we take great pride in that. And of course, because of that, we invest a lot in our people. It does take time. It's a labor and time intensive process to find the right people in most cases. But we do that diligently so that we know that we have the right fit for the company. And by and large, especially with the way our company is structured, most people that we bring on stay for quite a long time. So it's a benefit on both ends. We invest heavily at the front end, and typically our people invest in the company and support us in the long term as well.
Yeah, and a lot of the same stuff. One big difference for us is probably going to be a lot of the physical stuff. People still have to go to the military entrance processing station when they join the Space Force. So we get those DQs right off the bat from some highly, qualified, interested individuals. Law violations in the past come up because they have to get that TS, citizenship, different things like that. We have to kind of be privy to. But at the end of the day, we're doing the same things across the board. We're still the new shiny penny when it comes to the Space Force. So we're getting a lot of interest, but we're just losing some people because of the top secret clearance a lot of time. But we're still utilizing Air Force recruiting for the most part to get after the mission. We're marketing with them. So a lot of times you'll see Air Force and Space Force symbols together. But we just got our first Guardian recruiters in last month. We're slowly building our first Guardian recruiting squadron, Space Force recruiting squadron. So the future is coming, and it's exciting to get these Guardians out and spreading the word about what the Space Force actually does. Because up to this point, you had, security forces and the Air Force talking about the Space Force mission and not really knowing what it is. So the future's bright with the Space Force, but yeah, a lot of the same practices for us as well.
I think it's really good to hear that everybody is using like non-conventional talent acquisition processes, because I think that really opens the aperture to a lot of people that didn't necessarily think that they could be in the space defense industry based off their skill set or their expertise or experience. But going out and finding the right fit and then getting them the right training. Kind of like, investigative journalists that you have, Logan, right? Again, I would have never thought of that. I thought I'd just go to the military and find somebody who's an intel analyst, right? And I'll bring them in. But sometimes you don't have that available. And so I think that's really creative on how you guys are going after that. I also like that, you guys are engaging with the community and through the universities and the high schools, Gera. That's really, I think, building that talent and getting people, just like bought in and excited about space again, I think is what we need to do now to build that foundation, because then it's going to build the talent pool for all of us, right? Small business, big business, Space Force, everybody who's in this industry will start to get that talent because everybody's excited for space again, right? And so I think that's really fantastic. And just like Hank talked about, and I know this is, in every one of your companies, but it's investing in your people, right? I think that's huge, because when people feel like you genuinely care about them and their development and you want them to stay, they want to stay, So train people so that they can leave, but treat people so they don't want to leave, right? I think is a good way to look at it. Yeah, that's fantastic. So you guys kind of answered my follow-up question, but I'll still throw it out there if you want to add anything to it. So what opportunities would you like to see for interdisciplinary collaboration between academia, industry, and government to help strengthen that talent pipeline, other than the things that you guys have already talked about you're doing? Where do you think we could grow that any?
From my perspective, we do a really good job of this in the Tennessee Valley, especially the companies that are on this call. And let's get these students in the co-ops and internships. Let's get them clearances. Let's introduce them to industry. Because aside from us, getting to train young people and getting into invest in them, it really gives them perspective. I kind of alluded to some of my challenges going through school, and I did a lot of co-ops and internships, and that's what kept me going because I knew once I got through, there was a light on the end of the tunnel, and I never had to do dynamics again if I didn't want to. I would just say I'm sure a lot of that's very similar from the military side and getting them some industry experience. Just having those opportunities to me makes all the difference.
Yeah, I totally agree with Logan. Just being able to get the the hands-on keyboard and be able to jam out and get them the clearances. I think a lot of where we're pivoting as a nation and as technologies advance is a lot of the code low, deploy high. So we can reduce a lot of those needs of TS clearances and skiffs and all of that if we just maintain a higher security posture in an unclassified environment and just build a culture around data and managing data. A lot of what we're doing now is, AI, ML, and machine learning, and then just tons and tons of data that is just available open source. But being able to tailor it and build a culture of security, we can, code low, deploy high, and build those skills at a much younger and fresher, talent.
Yeah, I think just to comment, more of a philosophical comment here on that is, you have to recognize and respect what is deemed as success for each of these parties, right? Academia, industry, and government. The government's really driving the mission. You've got company reps from the defense industry here. But let's be honest, we can all have the values we want, but industry and the commercial sector doesn't exist unless it generates revenue and return and so that they can keep the lights on, right? We're all happy to see our customers succeed, and that's what we're here for. And then academia, a lot of times they get a bad rap because it's research for the sake of research. And, Stephen, we've talked about this, and some of the partnerships that we're investing in. And part of what I see is finding the mission that supports our customer that the research can tie to, and that brings it together. It brings it out of the lab, has an application for it, and eventually transitions it to something that's beneficial to those as the end user or operator. So that's really the part that I think is where we need to spend a lot more focus on, is recognizing that we all have our ideas of what is success, whether it's publishing a paper or completing a mission. But bringing those things together, they still support each other in many ways than we may not see up front. Over.
Yeah, and I think, Hank, you bring up a good point, right? And I think, taking research and tying it to a requirement or tying it to, a government capability and then finding a way to operationalize that, I think is what this office that I sit in here in Huntsville, that's the sole purpose, right? Is to engage with industry partners here where there's a lot of talent, a lot of government requirements that are coming in, and going back to UTSI and Tullahoma and saying, what capability do we have there to help with this research and help to mature this research so that we can operationalize it via, some of these small businesses and whatnot. And so that's one of the things that that gets me up every day is, interacting with you guys and as well as the Institute to make sure that we're still providing something to the warfighters, but also meeting the needs of academia, meeting the needs of industry and so forth. So I think that's fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take the last 7 minutes to kind of do some closing remarks. And so what I want to do is I'll just open this question up to everybody, take a few minutes to answer it each if you don't mind, but just share your thoughts on where you think the next 5 to 10 years in the space defense industry, what it will look like from a talent development perspective. And do you have any advice if you could go back, 20-ish years when you were, a younger person who was in college and going through everything, what advice would you give somebody who's interested in pursuing a career in space defense now that you can see it from a different perspective?
Yeah, so let me start with what advice would I give my younger self? I think that one I would have told my younger self that there's no right or wrong answer. It's a very fluid industry. It's a very dynamic industry, and take everything that comes as an opportunity. Like I'm with Logan. Like, I had too much going on in my life in undergrad, and like my grades weren't great. And then in order to build that up, like took semester for a business minor, and that like bumped up my grades. And that's when like I learned a lot about, okay, how do you like project manage and product manage, and how do you brief, and how do you communicate with others, and how do you take challenging complex problems and are able to articulate and communicate with people with that networking skill. So I think if I did that much earlier and didn't have a bias of, oh, I don't want to do business or I want to do anything like soft, I would have learned a much bigger lessons like at a much younger age. So I would recommend that to anybody that's going into like wanting to be in the aerospace industry, is just take every opportunity as a challenge, and or every challenge is an opportunity, and learn the business skills, the soft skills, and have that outlook on things. Where do I see the industry going in the 5 to 10 years? I think a lot of it is going to be quantum, a lot of quantum computing, a lot of bringing software computing and data computing and everything else like to the edge. As Hank said, we have billions of terabytes of data that are coming down every day. And we just can't parse through all of it. But if we can, use containers and use quantum computing at the edge, a lot of that can be automated, and it can be a repeatable, sustainable imagery and data analysis. So once it actually comes downlinked, we can just reduce that kill chain much faster. Talent wise, I think we're going to see a lot more diverse backgrounds coming into the industry. I see it a lot with my team. Since we take, integration all the way from like open source software all the way to deploy to operations to a SCIF. A lot of the folks that I'm seeing now are people that were like recruiters for Amazon, but then they took a computer science course on the side, or they took a DevSecOps LinkedIn course, and then like now they are over here coding low, deploying high. So I think we're going to see a much broader, diverse background for industry partners.
Yeah, just real quick for me, it's an exciting time. We're living through explosive growth right now, right? We have been for the last couple of years. I don't see that changing. What are we going to need in the next 5 to 10 years? I would be remiss in trying to guess at that. I don't know. I do know that whatever that's going to look like, it's going to have to be proliferated in the field. And we're going to need a lot of diverse people from a lot of diverse backgrounds. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself determination cures a lot. Just stick with what you're doing, set a goal and work towards it. Being wrong's better than being slow in most cases. And then, if I could just, anybody that listens to this, that's thinking about it, if you're really good at hard skills, hey, we need you. If you're not good at hard skills and you're thinking about where you would fit, yeah, me too. And we need you too.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, again, some kind of personal examples, and Logan hit on it with an example he gave too. At a previous company, my chief engineer for space in the space group was his first degree was in journalism. So if I went back and told myself one thing, it's recognize the benefit of all of your shared experiences and look for areas to be multi disciplined and diverse in your background, if at all possible. So going forward, I think that's a big piece of what the talent has to provide, is you have to have some multi-discipline perspectives on problems that you're trying to solve. And as previously mentioned, over the next 5 to 10 years, we have a massive data problem. The human's going to have to come out of the loop. AI, quantum, other advances are going to continue to exceed our potential to even fathom what that's going to look like in 5 to 10 years. We have to take advantage of that, and it's virtually an intractable problem to think about humans managing all of that context. So much more computer automation, so a much broader perspective from the talent pool to be able to manage and understand what those things are doing and when they're not doing it right, so we can fix that. Over.
Cool. Yeah. for myself, I feel like I did tell my younger self what to do. My sister just graduated college, and I said, hey, the space industry is booming right now, and it's an exciting time to get involved. And we're working her application right now to get her into the Space Force. So I wouldn't have got my sister in if I didn't think it was a right time and the right place to be. So I'm excited for her. I think it's such an exciting time for the field. So yeah, if I would tell young people is definitely look into it. Doesn't matter your background. If this is something that excites you and you want to participate in it, then give it a shot, give it a try. A lot of companies out there that are looking for highly motivated individuals. So besides that, the Space Force in the next 5 to 10 years, I mean, they're projecting it to become one of the biggest forces, if not the biggest force. So at the end of the day, this is the future of war fighting. The future is now, and the old ground and pound can go away really quick with a computer in front of somebody. So I think the Space Force is definitely here to stay, and we needed it because the war fight is going to come to us.
That's fantastic. So, yeah, I think everybody's perspective was super valuable in this venue. And so I just want to take a real quick second, just thank all four of you guys for participating in this and taking time out of your day. I think not only does it provide a really good perspective from a diverse group, but it also starts engaging some of these people with industry partners right now so that they can, now they can put a name with Torch or Ignite or SAIC or the Space Force and, just ways to leverage that opportunity, for the betterment of the entire space, community, if you will. So again, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, just go ahead and shoot them over to Anita, and I'll try to get you guys some answers on that, and I'll get you guys everybody's contact information. So